Well, guys, welcome to Time Circle at Pasadena Project Chelsea. We have Benjamin the Rocco.
Everybody gets that.
Yeah, and Benjamin Pritchard, and we're just going to nice informal gather and discuss type of talk here in the space. So let's gather and discuss.
We gathered.
Yeah. Well, what brought the idea of doing the show together for you guys? How did this come about?
Ben said, "I'm going to do the show over at Keith's, Chelsea," and I said, "Okay, that sounds like a good idea."
Yeah, I would think it started a little bit earlier than that. Yeah, I think what was it, 2015 or something? We did paint some trees.
Yeah,
and then, so painting
that
some
was our
trees.
first organized event together.
Yeah, and then that kind of I think initiated a conversation that's kind of been going since then. Where I would say, right?
Right.
We meet periodically. We just get into it. And
yeah, we talk about painting all the time anyway, and so we talk about each other's paintings, and then paintings start to talk to each other, and then they get up on the wall.
Yeah, but I would say that the great thing about this show was that he called me up one week and was like, "Hey, I got this space that's open, in like 10 days. You want to do Ben show? Because I proposed it years ago or something like that, and I was just like, dude, you want to do this like now?" And you were like, "Is this real or what?" Like you were kind of into it, but also like, really, like, can this actually manifest itself that we've been talking about for a while?
Yeah, so there's an improvisational
Which suits
quality to it.
Which suits our kind of freewheeling
Conversations.
Question. So did you guys both do new work for this? Because I knew some of your paintings were wet. When they were hung, so I think they're new work.
Well, because it was so fast. He came to my studio once and he chose work for the show, and I went to his studio once and chose work, for the show, and it was just that simple, that we did that not having ever really seen the space, and then we brought it in and realized that we didn't have to overthink it, that the show kind of on itself. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, it didn't make work for the show. No, on the contrary. I don't tend to make work for shows anyway. So we had it around. So work came first, the show came second. But did you make any paintings for the show, actually? Maybe one. One or two.
I mean, I've always got things just like going on. The studio's just this kind of slimy vortex.
Mine there. Except maybe that one, I think I finished that after we started talking about doing the show.
Which one?
That one in the center over there.
Interesting.
Maybe that,
but yeah, the ones that he chose were, for my thinking, were not finished. Like the Ben Pritchard would I get into this whole systematic of thinking, and it's self-defeating, really. It's bullshit, So he comes along and he's like, "That's him," and I'm like, "You're crazy," but it actually, he kind of pulls them out in a way, and that goes back to the time thing, in that there's different time periods in the work, So he's pulling basically sopping wet paintings out, and once they're old and stuff. So thanks.
Yeah, the conversation's a pretty part of it.
The conversation.
Should we just keep talking? So would that be better, or do you guys want to ask questions?
I'm going to ask questions. What ideas of time do each of you have about its role in painting activity?
Time. Yeah. Well, so there's a physical sense, I think, in which some event happens in a painting, a mark or a line or whatever, a gesture. And I think immediately that evokes a reaction to it, and sort of inevitably in the process of working. yes, no, and you want to do something else, I'm very interested in not doing anything else. I'm interested in, which is probably why there's not a lot of paint on a lot of my canvases, but I like to see something sit there, feel my reaction to it, feel how that reaction changes over days, weeks, months, and sometimes years, and then that's how I think about time. And then there's that thing where it's all presented at once with a painting, right? So whatever that amount of time could be, whoever comes to the painting sees it all in one thing. So I guess there's something literal about the way I think about it, right? But there's a translation of the literal experience of time making the thing into the two-dimensional immediate experience of seeing it. I guess that's a pretty classical way, actually, of looking at painting, and I think I'm actually a pretty classically minded artist, basically.
It seems like your moves are revealed and the subsequent moves don't bury the previous move, at least in these paintings. Whereas Ben's paintings, it seems like when you come to a canvas to work on it again, it's all up for grabs. You pretty much will keep continuing to paint the whole painting, and it's only historical record is sort of the surface, like the bumps and the thickness of, their images underneath, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that it's like a behavior or something that I'm aware of and I struggle with, but it still is like consistent, that the painting is like this, there's a layering element, there's a varying, pulling out, but then it all kind of comes together into an image or something that I can live with. Whereas you're much more like cruel.
Yeah, I want to see the evidence over time, and I think I like, we talked about this, I like working on found paintings sometimes too, because there's this very ambiguous relationship to time and the marks and that found thing. So I try to develop that found relationship in my own paintings. So yeah, I like to see the old marks in finished painting, which is different than this thing about the whole painting happening at once, which is another sort of fundamental way of looking at painting that people talk about, and the whole painting needs to get made at the same time, and that's how the thing comes together.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would actually do it quite that way.
Yeah. And that kind of contrast is interesting between it, because there's like a lot of similarities and then differences between our work, and it's fun to play around with that when you're hanging.
I don't have enough confidence in myself at a given moment to be sure of what I'm doing, so I need cumulative evidence over a long period of time.
Confidence? You don't have confidence in your work?
I don't have confidence in I don't have confidence in my ideas about my work, which are always informing how I judge it. So I can say that I have confidence about the things as a kind of physical activity and evidence of that. But I don't have confidence in my ability to judge them. So I guess that's kind of splitting hairs, but yeah, that's how it is.
You just gotta love yourself, man.
I'm good there. I'm working on it. Look at my shirt.
As I've sat with the works for a while, I've come up with this sort of theory, and it's probably I'm probably imagining this relationship between the two of you, but I always see Pritchard as a sort of wandering. He's like it's like a journey that he's on in the paintings that he makes, and he's finding his way through the paintings. And when I look at your work, I see it as you sort of mapping and navigating and charting that a sort of journey, or where you've been, or how you're going, and kind of like a little map for us to follow, perhaps. And I don't know if that's where you were coming, but it's really been enjoyable to find that relationship between the two of you. And am I on it a little bit? Is that?
Well, that resonates with me a bit, because I do find sometimes painting, I have this feeling of being surprised by the things that I find there and my reactions to them. So it's a little like exploring the landscape. So I like that idea of charting. I think that works for me.
Sometimes I think about you as like like 19th century ship navigator, you know, and you've got this like gyroscope, like, okay, we're, you know, going towards that iceberg or something. And these things, you know what I mean? Like some arcane device that you're using to navigate the seas or something, you know, the beer, I don't know.
It's funny that you say that, like that's the sort of that's what I'm talking, like I'm not thinking of something over land, I'm not thinking about terrestrial, like for me it's also very aquatic, it's like you are on like a boat.
Well, I like that. I think of us as proceeding into the unknown. I do not think of myself as working from the known. So I think of myself in relationship to the unknown. It's my orientation.
Oh, yeah.
And we've talked about that. I mean, I think, you know, that in some ways you are working from the known, right?
I love, for me, you know, painting's about the mysteries for sure. And that may be a romantic idea, but it's just this idea of just like, what the hell is going on? And somehow this like process of getting engaged and involved is like this revealing, and then that in turn leads to more, you know, further, you know, I don't think it's like I'm in a cave or something, you know, these things are coming out, I don't know. But that's definitely part of it. You might be on the sea, like going into the ocean, and I'm like, you know, going underground. I don't know.
Well, you know, as the Zen folks say, we're all floating along with the river, going with the current, just some are swimming against it, and some are just riding along on their inner tubes. But we're all going in the same direction.
Yeah, definitely.
I really like that you guys you didn't call them up and say, we have this show, bring 8 paintings to hang, and I bring 8 paintings to hang. You guys actually went and chose the other person's paintings.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it was not formal that way. It definitely came out of me visiting his studio, seeing his like, you know, he's kind of an installation. He has this entire world that he's working from, and the paintings are kind of surrounding the environment of his studio, and then that's the kind of backdrop for these conversations where we get far out. I don't know how to describe it almost to you know, any kind of standard civilian or art historical model. It's like folding all these, whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're obsessed with, or what's going on in your life into it. And then the paintings kind of are the result of that conversation. So there's really no other like formal way of doing it, you know. It would seem right. But that said, I guess, well, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't actually choose them either. I mean, we had a conversation and then recommendations were made and some were disregarded and others were accepted. It was a little more like that.
He was finding stuff on the floor.
But it does reflect a conversation. You know, it's a different situation than a curator sort of making decisions from the outside and finding those kind of connections.
Yeah.
It's more of a conversation.
Could have been just as easy to call them up and say, bring 6 paintings over to the gallery.
Yeah, that's what ended up happening, you know.
Happening.
Cool.
I don't know. How do you all feel about that? Does that seem strange to your own practices? Because you're all artists, right? I don't know you, but are you an artist? You're a writer. No. Then you probably have no concept of what we're talking about.
I studied aesthetics, so
You do?
I studied aesthetics. So
Yeah. I was joking.
exactly. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think water writing is kind of like a little pick out what they like you're writing. You know, like, oh, look at this essay and that story. You know?
Right.
Right, I'm just thinking the writings, we're up here trying to put these into words.
Yeah.
And writing's a process of putting that interpretation into print as you're writing about paintings.
I suppose so. I mean, I definitely can see how you want to write and describe some of these paintings. And this was also sort of a conversation with the artist about what your intention was, where you were coming from, and then wanting to go from there, right? You're right about something honestly.
Right.
You know, wanted to say, like, this is a freewheeling, beautiful painting, you know? It's sort of like Pollock, you know, it's like it looks like, it's harder than it looks, you know?
I'd say that's true.
Involved
I'd say painting is a lot harder than it looks, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
How long have you guys been friends and artist friends?
I think it's 5 years, right? About 5 years.
That, man.
Isn't that more?
Yeah, dude, you're getting old. I don't know, it was like probably 2013, 2012, something like that.
Do you find that you guys inform each other's work, bounce off each other? Is Ben a part of the other Ben's studio practice and vice versa in some way?
Yeah, actually, I've got one of his paintings in one of my sculptures. It's really
Wow, it actually literally
sculpture.
came to you.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the environment. Ben and I talk about work a lot. There's not that many people coming through my studio, so the ones who are coming through matter a lot, and what they say matters a lot, and I carry it with me when I work. So yeah, no, it's definitely an effect.
I think there's an interesting comparison to be made too, in that looking at this show and knowing your both your work outside of the show, I think that neither of you are interested in style or like sort of language-based solution to the problem of painting. Each painting just seems to fly or fail on its, irregardless of whether you're using geometry or you're defacing the geometry or you're using some geometry, in whatever ways you're doing it, you're not, I find this likable to my point of view, which is that you're not trying to convince me that the answer or the relevance of anything on the wall here is based on its style or graphics or language. There's an experiential quality to what I'm getting out of this show is like the experience of the making of each artwork either compels me or it doesn't. And I wouldn't say, well, your use of geometry, Ben, and these was clearly a way to get somewhere and deal with certain issues, but your willingness to deface it and amplify it and change it and vary it is just very interesting. That you're sort of saying, yeah, there's this geometry under there, but like don't look at it like I'm really, like it's not really an astrological diagram. It references it. Or it references the sextant or whatever that navigational metaphor was, but I'm using it because painting is something else. And I would say the same about Pritchard's work, that the gestural and the physicality of it, which could be a kind of style choice, I'm not getting that in these paintings. I'm just figuring he just used what he had to use to get the painting up on the wall. And so, I'm just appreciating that about your guys' show.
Yeah, well, you're outing me there a little bit, because I have this ambiguous relationship to what you call it charts. Any kind of cosmological diagram, which is always coming up in my paintings. Are you influenced by that? I think I said somewhere that I've never met one I didn't like, a cosmological diagram.
Right.
I said that to Laura, which is true. They all look completely beautiful to me. But on the other hand, as you're saying, there's not a sort of structured symbolic sense to these in which I could say this means that, like looking at the Zephyrol or something from the Kabbalah, you can associate symbolic meanings with different dots and this sort of thing, and do that with my paintings. So you're right, in some sense, the geometry's there just to represent structure, just structure generally.
Well, both of you guys are relating somewhat to what we call tantric art, and yet you're not making what I would consider a mistake to say, I buy the philosophy behind these images, hook, line, and sinker, and I'm re-advocating that philosophy. Our culture is different than the culture out of which those paintings came, and yet it's there to be used. And you guys are both pretty clear about it. I'm using it. Do I really believe it? Yeah, for now. But it gets you where you got to go. It's like, the Buddhist thing, and you use the raft to cross the river, and then you don't need the rafting. So that's a similarity I'm sort of appreciating.
There's also something about like trying to get beneath a descriptive type of experience, you know, and I guess that's the abstract or whatever, like whatever that you want to use that word for. But there's this like, if I can say it or spell it out or use some language to do it, that's not what I'm looking for. And so there's this constant like defacing or working beneath to folding over, you know, kneading it to get it to be something that is outside of my direct understanding, you know. And of course, you know, anything can be framed and described by other people, but over my experience of making them, they're constantly almost thwarting my ideas of what something is or isn't, you know.
The other thing I could add to that is that I am trying as hard as I can to find a structure, an image that I'm committed to. It's just the commitment that I have. So
The lobster.
Commitment issue.
You got to see this lobster painting. You wanted to bring it.
the lobster didn't make it into the show.
Lobster
Maybe
next
one.
next show we'll put the lobster in.
Singing lobster, actually.
You believe in that lobster.
Yeah, like I think with your work, especially like the materiality of that process of like engaging with painting and just like do something and then seeing where it goes seems to be really, very much looking at painting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not about me. It's about
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right.
You know, or this engagement in this process. You know,
Right.
and then
It's
these
like
things.
a kind of curiosity.
Curiosity, I love. Yeah, I'm a curious guy. You know. Ben's not at all. It's not curious.
I'm totally uninterested, actually. Totally.
Yeah. So the past couple of weeks we were talking about. We were actually getting into the kind of metaphysical side of things, and that was an interesting discussion in terms of the framework for our thinking about where these things come from. And there is, like you said, there is no you know, you can't nail it down, but yet you can approach it from just about any angle, you know, of you know, whatever spiritual analogies you want to sort of use. And that's such a kind of strange thing to bring up in today's world, where it's like that's like a terrifying sort of, you know, non way to talk about motivating for making work, but it definitely comes into it, and there is this like belief thing, you know.
Oh, he said the B word. You know I'm not down with that.
No, you're not.
I'm not down
Oh,
with
really?
belief.
You don't like
I
belief?
told you that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not interested in belief.
What do
I
you
think it's misleading.
Uh-huh.
Very misleading.
We have another person that we're in conversation with that is a believer, that believes and always tries to bring things back to that, and it is an interesting thing to sort of bounce off of.
Yeah, I'm super interested in religion.
You are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not
No.
belief.
Just not believe. So would you consider yourself a religious painter?
I think I'm extremely religious.
Really? Huh.
Temperament and attitude.
Religious?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
But I don't believe in anything.
I see.
But I'm very involved with ritual, you know, and I'm very involved with the notion of the sacred and those things in my work.
Uh-huh.
But I don't really have a belief system that I ascribe to that
Uh-huh.
supports me in any of that. They're more sort of preoccupations, actually,
Uh-huh.
and on a physical level.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, which is the problem I have with belief, is that I think it interferes with our physical interface
Uh-huh.
with the world.
Uh-huh. Interesting. That's pretty well thought out.
Thank you. I just came up with it.
Huh.
So how long are you going to keep us here?
You seem a little nervous. I thought you were going to do a performance.
I'm totally relaxed.
You need to drink some of this brown. It's really.
You have whiskey in there?
Yeah. What do you think I'm going to do?
Didn't know. Now I know. Would anyone else?
Care to partake?
So how would you each respond to if you detected complacency, which we all do in our studios from time to time? What do you do about what do you do about complacency?
It's, you know, all those hills and valleys they're equally like kind of dangerous. You know, I think again that goes back to the self. You know. But yeah, I think Nancy was actually saying, like, how do you keep your paintings fresh after, working for so long on them? And there is this, I don't know, you just got to find a way into it. It's like rethinking, reorienting yourself, day after day, and somehow finding a way into the practice, But I think thinking about outcomes is a dangerous. That's a way to create problems, and the process remains like ever fresh, to me. I would say, and outcomes get old, and like I'm going to paint this tree, and to reinvent something like that is difficult over time for me. Yeah.
What was the question again?
How do you deal with complacency, or what is your...
Complacency. Yeah. I think I embrace it. I find it very, it's like a kind of a relief when I experience it. So much of the time I've been motivated to do something. The actual complacency is, if I can muster it. If I can muster it.
Muster complacency.
Well, the response to it. If I can muster the ability to embrace it. Yeah, I would like to stop altogether. But I haven't found a way.
Well, it's funny with Pritchard. The only way to get a painting to actually stay the way it is to remove it from his studio and put it on the wall.
Yeah.
Because he will go back into it, and so like you don't really you really have complacency. You're always active when you're in your studio, and you will revisit the surface and rework it, even if it's already sort of entitled and kind of like immortalized. Like your paintings never get immortalized; they're constantly evolving until they leave the studio.
Yeah, and that's a problem. Yeah, and that goes back to the confidence thing. I think there's a couple of them that have lasted, but yeah, there's definitely this sort of tearing down and rebuilding thing that I'm involved in, and it's kind of annoying, but
Well, I think you're really looking at the process from the inside, which is not something to take lightly. I think that's a compelling thing about your paintings.
And sometimes you're right when you do that. Sometimes you can think something's done, and then you push it just a little bit, then you go back into it and push it. Sometimes you're wrong, you just go to painting. But sometimes that possibility of being right and then actually taking it to another level is always that's the kind of carrot that kind of pushes that. So, it can come from a place of confidence or lack of confidence. Sometimes it takes confidence to screw up something or the possibility of screwing up something that's already kind of a set thing. You go back in it, make it give it that little boost, and then it's totally different thing.
That's very well put. I think that's why having practice is so wonderful, because you can start to get involved with that.
Yeah.
It's not a straight path, is it?
Right, no.
Yeah, they're funny things, the painting, once you start to see it from the inside out, like you say, it starts to kind of dominate your consciousness. But I guess for me, I'm wary of patterns or styles, like you were saying earlier, like I don't want to make Ben Pritchard paintings, I'm interested in disrupting anything that kind of approaches some sort of idea of a label or a specific. It's just not interesting to me. I'm not. That's not art to me. That's marketing. If I wanted to make money, I would own a pizza store. I would make pizzas. And painting for me is about rethinking, reworking.
You're always trying to grab the silent moment.
The silent moment.
That's where you find, when you find it, that's when you're, thrown down the clean.
Leslie?
Welcome.
To Pritchard. So do you never feel, and I can relate to what you're saying, something about wanting to always find something new, and I think when I was younger, maybe I felt that to a fault. Like I look back at some of my old paintings and I feel like there was a lot in there and I could have gotten more out of it. So I mean, do you not sometimes feel like, oh, there's something interesting happening here and I'm going to do that? Not of course make it the same thing, but
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the things that keeps me going, and then I'll find something different in that process. If you think you're going to make the same thing, you're not. But sometimes that's very interesting to me to try to, I guess, to understand better what I did or figure out what the potential of it is.
Yeah, no, that's good advice, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Not advice, just
No, but I mean, it's like this idea of of slowing down and looking at what you're doing instead of just reacting emotionally and like, you know what I mean? Like that, and that's I guess what I mean when I'm thinking about it. Like I don't want that to be a mannerism or
right. I used to feel like that, it would be wrong if I in any way repeated myself, and I guess I sort of have started to think that can have a more layered or subtle meaning.
That kind of speaks to the circle title, because I think both of us are kind of at a place where we've been working for a while, and then it's like we're seeing things kind of come around, and it's like, oh yeah, like I've made this painting before, I've been in this situation before,
Right.
and it's like now I'm seeing it again, for the second or third time or something like that. And maybe it's got something to tell me that I overlooked when I was, when I didn't like it or something, like I didn't like what the painting was telling me, or I was unhappy with it.
That's funny. I mean, I think that's right, that we are overlapping a lot in the way we're thinking about time. And I'm looking at my painting over there with the circles in it. I'm looking at yours over there with the squares in it. And I'm realizing that the birth of the square and the circle is a metaphor for the actual measurement of time, conceptualizing it as a form, which is I guess a complicated way to say I agree, yeah. We talk about time a lot, and I think I'm also preoccupied with the way that time affects perception, my own perception.
With Pritchard's last show, the Lower East Side show, we were talking a little bit about, I just like the idea of how we were describing some of the, when you rework these paintings in your studio, like they're panels of inquiry, where you might revisit that question or that conversation, and I just ran away with this thought in my mind that, each one's sort of this little conversation you're having, and you never quite hit file, like print, you're just saving the document to talk to it later at another moment.
Right. Yeah.
Even if it's been, sitting around for a while, it might live for a few years in the current state, you might end up wanting to go back into it and talk to it about that subject again.
Yeah. Well, I think we live, in the kind of spirit of the times is the identity, the identity of the artist. And I would say that me, personally, I'm interested in like the identity of each of the paintings, which is a little bit different. But to me, they all have their own concerns that may change or stay the same, but they all have their specific things that they're addressing, and that's kind of how I keep them different, in some ways. I'd say a lot of the artists that I admire do that too, where it's not about repetition so much as development of the. It's like each one's a plant, and this one's a cactus, and this one's a fern, or something like that, and they all have their own needs and their own environments that they need to grow in.
Yeah, I think that's right for you.
You make hanging plants.
I think mine are a little more like plans in some way.
Plans.
We talked about that they're related to architecture, and that they're related to three-dimensional space, that they're diagramming. Someone brought up Tantra earlier, I'm not sure who that was.
Peter did.
Yeah. which is, I think, more what I'm operating on.
I don't know if you guys know, but you know, I think Ben is a sculptor, not a painter, really. Like he's like, I see these,
Despite all the evidence.
despite all the painterly evidence, I see these as like three-dimensional, almost like architectural drawings that exist in 2D, and then in a studio, there's this whole world. It's kind of, these things are creating, you know.
Yeah, I make sculpture, and it definitely, I mean, yeah, Ben's seen more of my studio than most anybody.
Except for
But so he's seen the relationship of the sculpture to the painting there. And I think that's right on. Just there's none of it here.
How would you describe the relationship? Like, are these sort of sketches,
No.
or do they live alongside equally?
Well, they're not sketches, but I think they are a little plan-like. And there's a way I think that if you saw them next to each other, it would be a little like you were, when you're looking at the sculpture, you'd be looking at a painting sort of twisted around itself. So there's this, I think there's a sense that something that I'm trying for spatially in the paintings, I'm sort of working with further or differently or alternatively in the sculpture. But it's not quite like an architectural plan to a building sort of a thing where you could make the immediate
It's like an
connection.
attitude.
It's like a feel,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because your sculptures, at least the ones I'm thinking of, they're more like bricolage, right? Kind of?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't imagine that.
Squish-a-losh, increasingly.
Okay.
But yeah, you're not
Bricolage
right.
and then putting together, and so
Yeah.
in a way it almost seems like, you know, you're planning space in the paintings, you know, and you're sort of like feeling it out without planning so much in the sculptures. And that's how it looks.
Well, yeah, sculpture doesn't give me the same opportunity to plan.
No.
I think because with painting, I'm working with a rectangle, which is already the basis of the plan. But when your sculpture, there's a more ambiguous beginning point. So I think you're probably right. Yeah.
All right.
You got enough?
Yeah, I think, like I said, everyone kind of is welcome to hang out, have
Whiskey.
discuss. Thanks.